Oh, that's not good.
All right. Let's just get through it.
And welcome to another episode of the Friday edition of Ripping the Rack podcast. I am...
It was a jazzy intro right there. I like that.
I know. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know. Let's see. I am 1/3 of your Triforce Tri-Host legs. My name is Tim. With me today, on my right, could be on your left, could be on the top, could be on the bottom. It's a fucking surprise. Brian Athern, how you doing, buddy?
Good. What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Rolling into the weekend. Going to talk a good topic today. Looking forward to it. We're
going to have some fun.
Yes.
And on my left, our third leg, arguably the most important leg of a tri-leg is the third leg. Because if you don't, then it's a two-legged stool.
Right. And those fall over all the time.
Those fall over. So,
right.
Maki, how you doing, buddy?
Not bad, dudes. How we doing tonight?
Doing great.
All right.
Doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
So we're actually going to delve into a subject that is near and dear to the three of us.
Yes.
Probably more. I'm going to say out of this, though, you two probably have more knowledge than I do on this one.
I have a fair share.
I'll freely admit that. We're going down the rabbit hole of video games, video game consoles, and just kind of the evolution of gaming consoles and whatnot. Again, we're all gamers of various, consoles, things like that.
And we're very lucky to be the ages that we are, because roughly around our age, people have seen the beginning all the way till now, going back to, like you were talking about earlier, the old Pong machine that was first, and then the Ataris and the Nintendos. We were all little kids all the way up until now, where we have our PS5s and the new Xbox Series 1s, and the massive amount of evolution that's happened in 40 years.
It is absolutely. I was thinking about this when Brian brought this up earlier, and we have a little group chat because, well, we're cool like that, and
we're cool like that.
We're cool like that.
All the kids like that. Your pants.
That's right.
So I obviously I did a lot of thinking about it because I was on the road most of the day today, and as I was driving home, got thinking about kind of the evolution. And Maki, I know you're the one that brought up the evolution. Brian, you brought up video gaming itself and things like that. And I kept thinking, and I was like, man, I was 8 years old. I think I was around 8 years old when we got our first real video gaming system. Not Pong, because we had Pong.
Didn't that plug into your regular TV back in the day?
Honestly, I don't even remember. I just remember
that was they had like two of those, like ColecoVision was one of them that plugged into your TV.
Yeah.
The Atari would, but you had to have an RF modular on it, and that's the one you slid
to channel 3.
Yeah, and then you had to put it on 3, and when you turn the power on it.
Yes. So we had the Atari 2600, and I got thinking back, and I'm like, okay, I turned 50 this year. 41 years ago, I can remember getting the Atari with the little joystick and one button. That's it.
That was it.
Ding, 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 ding.
That was
Fire. Ding, ding. And I just started thinking about these games that I thought were just absolutely groundbreaking.
Look at this guy.
Revolutionary.
Look at
this guy. That's a 2600, folks.
There it
is. Yes, it is.
That is a 2600 cartridge.
Yes, it is.
And they go like this.
See, kids, back in the day, we didn't have discs or downloads. Everything came on this big plastic box.
And that works, by the way.
And it worked. It was what we had. They were the best.
I have a CRT TV, and I can plug that 2600 in, and it works.
So I get thinking, I'm like, I had to Google Atari 2600 games because I The only games that I could truly think of that I played all the time, right off the top of my head, Pitfall, Barnstormer, which I thought was just totally cool because if you could beat, and I want to say it was like 32 point something seconds, if you took a picture of it and you sent it off to Laverdiers to get
developed,
and then 2 weeks later you got your picture back, and then you actually wrote an envelope out, you wrote the address, and you sent the picture to Atari or was it
the creators of
Barnstormer, and I can't remember now.
Probably Activision. They did a lot of those back in the day.
Then you would get your name and the picture in their monthly or bi-monthly magazine that you used to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I spent hours upon hours playing this 8-bit game.
Wasn't
flying.
Wasn't even 8.
What? No, probably not.
8-bit is Nintendo.
Nintendo
Entertainment
System
was
in television.
Yes.
And television was 8-bit. ColecoVision and television. Commodore 64 was actually either 16 or 32. I have one of those too. It's packed away. So for those that don't know and think I'm weird because I have all this, I am a video game collector. I collect video games. I probably have, I could get my app out and tell you, but honestly, I probably have 200 video games in my basement. I have a Nintendo, a Sega, a Super Nintendo. I have a 64. I don't have a GameCube, but my Wii plays GameCube games. I have PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4. So I collect things. Most of them I've had since I was a kid.
Sure.
Yep.
And it's just I am aware, and I don't know how many other people are. And we saw it a little bit with what happened a few weeks ago with PlayStation, which they were going to close their PS3 store. Meaning there were games that you have bought on their digital storefront that if you don't have downloaded and they close the store, you no longer have access to that game you bought and paid for. It does not exist anymore. I am aware there's going to be a day when physical media, or there are these games that I have on physical media.
Excuse me.
That
I'm doing it.
Are eventually going to
Thank you.
Go away. Like, you won't be able to be played anyway else except for one of these consoles and a cartridge. And I will have those. It's like my own little Smithsonian.
Sorry, Brian.
It's hard to find good help, right, Mark?
Sorry, Brian. Sorry.
That's
Kids
okay,
don't do drugs, okay? Don't do drugs.
Kids don't do drugs.
Don't smoke crack.
Oh.
But yeah, no, I collect. I've been collecting for about 15 years or so now. I started in college, and I have a soft spot for the old games. Like, so much of my childhood. I was an only child, so I didn't have any brothers or sisters to play with, so I played video games when my friends were busy. So that and my whole family did. Like, my dad played. Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to play video games, like, during the day. If it was nice out, I wasn't allowed to be inside, which basically meant go do something. The only time I played, like, the Atari was at night. Like, I'd ask my mom. I'd be like, Mom, can I go? And I'd go in her sewing room because she had a TV in there. And that's where the Atari was. And I'd be like, can I go play games? And she'd be like, it was either yes or no. Like, obviously, yes was meant she was going to watch TV out in the living room or whatever. So feel free to go.
She was watching Columbo. You go play Pac-Man.
Dallas and Dynasty.
Dallas, they were my mother's favorite shows when I was a kid.
Yeah. Who Shot JR?
Yeah.
My mother made me watch that episode, that last episode.
Which is funny because Marky will know this, which was parodied when we were children with Who Shot Montgomery Burns on The Simpsons.
That's true. Yes.
Remember that whole summer they had the Who Shot Monty Burns thing?
That's so. It's funny, Brian, that you mentioned it, Marky. I'm sure you were probably a little bit. You're again being younger than I am. A little bit different, obviously. You growing up in a city versus growing up in a town of 5,000.
Like I grew up in an apartment complex in a little city called Somerville, Mass. That there was like 800 people that lived there, a whole bunch of little kids and stuff. But there was a bunch of kids my age, but we all had the systems. Like we went out and played, like every other kid, play hockey, played football on the concrete, whatever. It was what we did. Explains a few things nowadays, to be honest with you. But at the same time, on rainy days or crappy days or whatever, we were all at one of our other buddies' apartments. There were 3 buildings. Each building had like, I think 300 or 400 apartments in it. And at any one crappy day, there would have been 5 to 10 of us in one of our other buddies' rooms while we were playing Mario tournaments. Later on with Sega Genesis, it was like Sonic the Hedgehog stuff, 2-player. It was an integral part of us growing up. And even like on nice days, it was just like, I don't want to go out today. I'd do my homework, and then I'd just go sit down, and I'd play like John Elway quarterback for hours and hours and hours and hours. Or I'd fire up the Sega Saturn later on in life, and I would just play and play and play and play and play. I don't know what my childhood would have been if I didn't have a console in my room from age like 4 on.
Yeah. Now there's a whole lot of people, especially older people, that just went, oh, you can't play video games. Why don't you go do something thought-provoking, like read a book or watch a movie? Let me let you in on a thing, folks. Guess what video games are?
Movies and books that you don't play through.
Yeah, there's bad shit out there, and I don't say bad shit. And there's something for everybody's taste. I do not like competitive first-person shooters. I don't play Call of Duty.
Oh, I hate them. I'm so bad at
I play a little bit of Apex. But I love single-player, story-driven games. Mm-hmm. You give me an Uncharted, you give me a Red Dead, you give me a Grand Theft, something like that.
I will say, I'm sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, just real quick. I've beaten Dark Souls. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I did not enjoy beating Dark Souls. That was a job. That was get good, beat the game because nobody else can. Mm-hmm. I have gone through my time of get good. I'm a 35-year-old dad now. I want a game to value my time. I want to sit down for an hour and make an hour's worth of progress.
Yes.
I don't want to sit down, die 14 times, and they're at the exact same spot I was.
Correct. Yes.
I've done that. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim.
No, that's okay, because I have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
They are older. They're now 29, 28, and 23. 29, 20, yeah. So video games for them, that's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them are really gamers. The oldest one's he's not a gamer. He's never really got into it. Just wasn't his thing. The other 2, Call of Duty, they'll play online, Warzone, not so much Fortnite anymore, a lot of 2K21, a lot of basketball. I now will tell you, I love the Call of Duty series. I don't like playing online. I like to play the storyline.
Mm-hmm. Campaigns.
I'm a huge campaign guy.
I love those. I like Brian. My days of trying to get really good to beat some things. That I'm 49 years old. I play video games to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I will play like MLB 21 on rookie because I want to see if I can hit 100 home runs.
Right.
My kids will look at me and be like, "How is that even fun?" And I'm like, because all I'm doing is just sitting here mashing the ball. I don't want to play on super executive hard, kick you in the nuts, your controller beats the shit out of you. Like I don't no. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about and I'm going to let you 2 kind of drive this because again, you guys are more of the gamers. But Marky, you had mentioned kind of going through the evolution of the consoles, and then maybe given you kind of the top 1 or 2 games that you liked from those consoles.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this idea.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let Marky.
Where do we start at?
We start at the beginning. I would start back at the Atari. I don't know about you,
2600.
That was
the first. Yeah, that was my first as well.
That I can remember.
And of course, it wasn't mine, but
I remember getting it for Christmas. I think I was 4 or 5, so it was like 1985, 1986.
See, I was 1. That's when I was born.
Oh yeah, I was born in 81, so I just got a couple years on you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not as many years as Tim has on me, but that's perfectly fine. I love you, buddy. Sorry.
That's okay. I think
I love it.
The Atari 2600. For some reason, right around 1980 is when I remember us getting one. You take a look at them. If you take a look at those now, like the videos, YouTube, whatever, of those games,
they're
so awful.
You would literally sit back and go, and pardon my language, but how the fuck do you guys even play these?
Right,
but Adventure is a block and walls.
Yes.
Put
That's
yourself
it's a block.
back, though. 35, 38, whatever. Put yourself back 40 years in
Pitfall
time.
was amazing.
This was revolutionary.
Yeah.
This was like nothing. This was TV that you controlled in your bedroom. And when you were a 4 or 5-year-old kid, and I could sit around, like I had played Pac-Man in the bowling alley in Somerville. They had a little bowling alley over there. And I had been with my grandparents. And I used to stand on the milk crate and play the Pac-Man game, the old stand-up arcade game. And that was fun. Now I was playing it in my bedroom. Oh my God, don't get me wrong, it was rudimentary. It was the ugliest thing. It didn't look anything like the arcade game.
It looked nothing like the real Pac-Man.
But I was still playing Pac-Man.
Yes.
And that was cool.
This is arguably worse than the E.T. game they made.
See,
which we'll get to
the
that.
E.T. game.
I
had
have
that
it
game
over
when
there.
I was a kid. And I could never get past like the 3rd screen. I could make E.T.'s head go up and down.
Do you want to know why? Because I
know why.
The game's broken. The game is broken.
Yes.
You can't beat it. It's a broken game.
So I remember, like the 2600, I mentioned it earlier, Pitfall, Barnstormer, but the ones that I truly remember, like Asteroids. Because I played that in Laverdier's arcade, dropping a quarter in and just play it. Now again, like Pac-Man in the arcade, even though this had the Asteroids name, it was still...
But the idea back then was not get the highest quality game out.
Right.
It was get a game out because the market was so new and it was so unsaturated that the first company that put out these mega ports of these arcade games were going to win, plain and simple, flat out. And they put out these 70% done ports. But it didn't matter. People still bought them by the truckloads.
So in today's, real quick, Tim, in today's gaming, a game like, well, let's take a look. The Elder Scrolls Skyrim came out in 2011. Grand Theft Auto came out in 2013. They are still working on sequels to those.
Yes.
Yeah.
It takes a group of 100 people 5 years to make a video game now. The Atari ports were 3 people teams, and they took 2 weeks.
Yep.
It's funny. It's just funny to me because I could play for hours on end back then.
Yep.
If I had the chance, like you take a rainy day in the summer when you couldn't go outside, you couldn't do anything. My mom's at work. I've done my
car.
I've done my chores. I'm 10 years old. I'm playing Asteroids. I'm playing Defender. I'm playing Circus. There was a fucking game called Circus Atari.
Was there really?
Yes.
I never knew that.
You want to know what the big thing? And I remember this vividly.
I think if I have it.
There's like, I remember the guy jumps down and hits the seesaw, and you tried to get up.
Oh, you shoot the bear.
You
shoot the bear and you try and land him in the bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I played the Commodore 64 port.
Yeah.
Like my mom was into Commodore 64. Like that's where I learned how to play. That's where Carmen Sandiego and some of the first ever sports games I played were on Commodore 64. And like Crystal Castles. There was this little bear on this ball, and it was a geometry game like Hubert.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know, Atari 2600, and then it went, the Atari 5200,
the Odyssey,
and then of course, Intellivision was also their competition. So you had the Atari 2600.
That was RCA, yeah,
and Intellivision, which I had a couple of friends that had Intellivision, and we would play baseball and football, bowling, and skiing. Like those four. And Intellivision was like the funkiest controller, if you guys remember.
Yeah, it was. Like a remote. It had numbers on it, right?
Yeah, like one through 9. Yeah. It had a keypad.
Yep.
And you would take this piece of plastic and put it down through. And like with baseball, the catcher was like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 was the catcher. 1 was a left fielder. I mean, it was just.
Yeah. And then you had in Japan around the same time, they came out with the MSX, and that was kind of the precursor to Nintendo. A lot of your Nintendo games were on the MSX, like Metal Gear was on there. Mario Brothers was on the original MSX. The original Zelda, I know we're getting into NES or Famicom, whichever you want to call it, but these all were on the MSX in Japan first, which was a disc-based system.
Okay. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
I'd never even heard of that.
They were very similar to like 3.5 floppies, not the big 5, or the 3 1/4 floppies. They were very similar to those.
So then Nintendo decided to make the Famicom over in Japan, which became the NES over here. And that came off the heels. They didn't think it was going to do well over here because that was coming off of the 86 or 87 crash because of the ET game, and people were sick of Atari, and then Mario Brothers came out.
Yes. Mario Brothers is credited as being the game that saved video games, at least here in the United States.
So that was on what, the Nintendo?
Yeah, that was on the NES, the Famicom over in Japan. It is an insanely big seller over here because it came packaged in, which they didn't do in Japan, but they packaged a game in over here in America. And I know I had my first NES it had the split cartridge. You got the NES, the 2 controllers, the light gun, and you got Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. And those were the 2. And the dog would laugh at you when you missed.
I remember
he'd laugh at you, and you'd shoot the dog.
That was the action set.
Let me tell you something funny about that. Do you know you can play 2-player Duck Hunt?
How?
You plug in a controller, you plug in a gun, the other person controls the ducks.
I had no
Is that
idea.
how that worked?
That's how you play 2-player Duck Hunt.
I wish I had a brother. I had 2 sisters, and they both hated video games so damn much. I would have learned that. I would have known that.
I didn't have a brother. I just this is the shit I listen to, dude. I listen to 4 or 5 gaming podcasts a week. Like there's one called Kodak's History of Gaming, and they literally go through what we're doing right now.
Okay,
I'm a nerd. I'm an ultra nerd.
So let's kind of move beyond the 2600 because I think everybody knows that
we're old.
Let's move to that next level, which kind of brought video games mainstream, which would be the Nintendo. I think that's when it brought it more mainstream because, and I'll tell you why I say this. When I was in high school, so I did not have a Nintendo, but one of my best friends and his brother, Jeff Parsons and Joel Parsons. Jeff Parsons is the one of the morning show hosts on the Q97.9. He is a huge pinball junkie. We are going to have him on this show on a Friday sometime.
Can't wait to talk pinball with him.
That's good.
Be awesome. Yeah.
I mean, he's gone to the pinball. What do they have at the Pinball World Championships in like Pittsburgh?
World Series of Pinball. Yeah.
Yeah. He's gone to that. He's actually competed in it and stuff.
Oh shit.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Like 3 years
Loved it.
ago, somebody reset the rolls on a Guns N' Roses game there. Like they literally maxed out the score, and they like the whole rails reset.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, so I bring this up because that was my first foray into, dudes, let's play video games all night. And we would stay up until 3, 4, 5 in the morning playing Legend of Zelda.
Yes. It's one of my favorite games of all time.
I remember to this day, there are a couple of things with Legend of Zelda, and it is one of my all-time favorite video games of the history of Evers. And I'll never forget it. It's called, it's one section, I can't remember what level it is, but it says Dodongo dislikes smoke.
Level 2.
Dodongo, it's that
Underground 2.
No, I think it's a little.
It's the very first boss. Dodongo is the first one, and you beat him because when they say that, you are known to drop bombs near him.
Drop bombs, and it took us.
He's the dinosaur guy.
Yeah, he was like the Triceratops.
Yeah, it took us forever to figure out what the Dodongo dislikes smoke. Yep. To a point where
you're gonna feel like.
I remember being at school. Okay, I was a sophomore, junior in high school. And we would pass each other in the hall and we'd look and go, Dodongo dislikes smoke. Like just being stupid like that. You know what I mean?
I'm going to shit on your parade, make you feel even dumber. If you read the instruction book, it tells you where to go and how to play the game.
Yeah, we never, screw that. We didn't read any instruction book.
Yeah.
I remember the map. It was one of the first games that came with a map.
Yes, it did.
You know what one of those new in box goes for?
Most of it was filled in. The whole map wasn't filled in.
No.
It was like 80% of it.
Yeah.
Was you had to adventure and find the rest of it because a lot of it was like secretly unlocked.
Oh, you had to
follow a pattern of certain moves.
And you had to put bombs in these little rocks, and that would create the cave.
And trees, yeah.
Yeah. No. So I bring that up only because I really do look at Nintendo as really capitalizing on the video game craze that to me started in the United States around 86, 87.
I think you should say restarted because of all the years that the Atari was out and so many people did have Atari.
Pac-Man.
Yes, it was first. And then there was the mega crash, and I believe it was 86. The video game crash when E.T. flopped a nut and everybody was like, this is shit. And then that's when the Nintendo Entertainment System made it to North America and Europe and everywhere else. And that was like the restart of the home console situation. Something totally new, cartridges that looked totally different, graphics that were amazing. Great. They looked so much better. The colors, music, because we went from less than 8-bit to Nintendo's 8-bit. And it was just better.
The chip tune songs. I have a playlist on my Spotify, and it's all 8 bits, like the Castlevania theme, the Mario theme, the Zelda Overture, Tetris. Just little things that stick in my head. You know what sticks in my head? The song from the first Ninja Turtles, not the second one, the arcade port where you're in the burning building. The first one with the water level, that's a bitch. But the song.
Oh, I hate that level. I hate that level.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's one quick story that I will tell you that.
God, it's childhood.
Oh my God, it's awesome. This is.
I'm gonna go home.
You know what? I'm telling you right now. I mean, we're already 30 minutes into this. This is going to be a 2-part series. We will not get through.
No, we have to continue this discussion.
Yes, because we can't do what we did last week, which was an hour and a half show, but we just went off the rails. So we're going to give it another 15 minutes, and we're going to call it quits for tonight.
Let's go. Let's go up to discs, and that leaves us with the NES, the SNES.
Yep.
And really the 64 to talk about.
Let me just tell you one quick story the other thing. A school project, our friend Scotty Rector, God rest his soul, passed away years and years and years ago, did a school project. He borrowed a video camcorder from the high school, set up the tripod in the living room, focused on the TV, and I played Double Dribble.
Oh my goodness.
He and Joel did announcing and color commentary.
That is awesome.
And they actually put it together and did a school project on it was either like how to do announcing or how to something like that. But I'll never forget it.
Do you still have that? I know a few people that could really, really learn from a how to announce book. Joe Buck.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no shit. I remember being a kid. We got our first camcorder in the house. Remember, they were gigantic suitcase-sized things. You had to put.
I got one in the basement.
Dude, I remember doing it, setting it up in my room, flipping a laundry hamper like over, setting it up on like 3 books so it could film my TV, and I would sit there and record my games of Super Mario Brothers or Legend of Zelda and stuff like that, just to have them on VHS tapes. Like my mother probably still has them from like 1989. That's
for
hours.
But this is what I remember about.
Well, we played them that long because none of them had save states because there's no battery in them.
Right.
One did.
Very few. Zelda did.
Legend of Zelda had a save feature in it where, thank God, because that game used to take so long to beat if you were like 100% completionist, that game would take you forever in a day.
I don't know.
By the way, the batteries still work because my old save files still load up from my.
There's a couple of Contra. You guys remember?
Up, down, down, left, right, A, B, start.
B, A, start.
Player.
Up, down, left, right, B, A, start. Yes, B, A, or B, A, select start.
Yeah.
Select start player.
It was, again.
That works with every Konami game, by the way.
Yeah.
You can do that on any Konami game.
It was just Konami code.
If you do it on Double Dragon, you get like 2 extra continues. If you do it on the Ninja Turtles game, you get all maxed out weapons. It's a different thing in every Konami game.
But think about how Nintendo to me did it right. Like they got Mike Tyson in his prime.
Yep.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
But they didn't pay him. So after a while, the later versions of that, it's called Mr. Dream's Punch-Out.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a Mike Tyson copy.
I have two Mike Tysons. I still have my original one, and I bought one at a secondhand shop just because it was there. It was like $2.
So to me,
still to this day, I've never beaten Mike Tyson in that game. Never.
That's you take a look at the difference between your Atari 2600, just your graphics, and now you're looking at the Nintendo. Okay. And then what happened in 1990? What came out in 1990?
2 things actually came out in 90.
Yeah.
The Game Boy.
Yeah.
And the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the Super Famicom.
Yes. Which again, in 1990, I was 19 years old. I now had my very first one that I bought with my own money was a Super Nintendo.
Which one did you get? Did you get the play-in pack that came with just Super Mario World, or did you get the Super Mario World and Super Mario All-Stars pack?
I had Super Mario World.
I got the All-Stars one for Christmas, but I had to... No, this is back in the days of stupid shit, and I had to send in my receipt and my proof of purchase so they could send me my cartridge. Because I thought that they were just trying, but they didn't have them made yet at that point.
Marky, what was your favorite? And Brian, I'm going to ask this so you think about it. Your top 2 favorite Nintendo games.
Nintendo games.
Nintendo, not Super Nintendo. Nintendo.
That's tough.
So, my all-time favorite video game on the Nintendo forever and a day will always be Super Mario Brothers 3. Always, always, always. It is my favorite.
It's the greatest game ever made.
I would never argue that because it would be wrong to argue it. And my second favorite game would absolutely be Legend of Zelda. My third favorite game to do a top 3 is original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers. It was a 2-player game, and I remember I loved this game so much because my sister. This was the game I used to play with my sister, and I used to absolutely destroy her. Because it was like a one-on-one Mario versus Luigi battle. And I would just destroy her.
punch the turtles, flip them, and then you run them over and you get points. And there's
Yep.
the POW in the middle. Yeah.
Yep.
Brian, what's
Very
yours?
obscure game.
So if I had 3 Nintendo games, regular NES games, Super Mario Bros. 3, because it is the greatest game ever made.
Mhm.
And it's just because of what it brought into video games. Number one, it brought into the different worlds thing. You had that in the original Mario, but not to the extent of this one.
Not
with
like
the
this.
map
Not even
and
close.
and you can move it around. Warp whistles. It's the first time you got the tail, so you could fly. It was the first time Mario flew. Like,
you had an item bar underneath
Yeah.
you, so like you didn't have to worry
you
about.
could
I gotta
save
make
specials.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry
Like-
about. I got to make it to this point in the level to find the mushroom. No, you could. If you died, you could just use one and go
Mhm.
into the level big and get past that point that you kept dying at.
So that one. The second one is probably Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. That's the arcade port where you start in the burning building, and it's more like the cartoon TV show.
Yeah.
And if I gotta go with 3, because Marky did 3, I'm gonna do 3. It's Castlevania, the first one.
Ooh.
It's hard as hell, but I
Yep.
love it.
Okay. I will my top 3 regular Nintendo games. Number 1 to me is Legend of Zelda. And I think that's because that's the game that we played. And I remember, like, Joel and I, Jeff's brother, he was a couple of years younger than us. He was a freshman when we were juniors. That's the game we finished together. Jeff couldn't make it. It had basically passed out and fallen asleep. And we finished at like 4 a.m. And I just remember us like running around his house, like screaming until his
It's
mother
no
yelled
joke.
at us, like,
No joke to
with
finish
you
that
guys
game in
just
one
Yeah.
shut
sitting.
up, or
You finished that game in one sitting. That's no joke whatsoever. Especially being kids.
Number 2 would be Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yep.
And number 3 for me was Contra.
You know, if I
'Cause it
take
was-
away the idea of killing my sister in a game, I would have picked Contra also. It's a game I put on to feel good about myself when I need to beat a game. I got nothing to do for like 20 minutes. That's my go-to game.
It was the first game that I can remember that you could play together without bogging down. Like, you know what I mean?
hmm
It
Yeah.
just
No split screen.
no
But-
split screen.
You know what we didn't talk about either are some of the really great games that were like, we can't talk about all of them, but the oddball ones that we don't think of, like Gauntlet. Gauntlet was an NES game.
Yep.
I never played that.
Yeah, and
I
those
didn't-
weird, obscure, like Indiana Jones had a
Mhm.
video, and it was terrible, but it was fun.
It was fun.
On that level, you know what was a good game too? They made Back to the Future games for Nintendo.
Mhm.
The first one was god awful. Back to the Future 1 was terrible, but then they made a second one of like 2 and 3 like melded
Yeah.
together. And that was really good. That was they brought in a ton of the movie lore with it from 2 and 3. It was I still have it. Like I haven't played it much, but I also have a decent collection of old Nintendo and Atari and stuff. It kind of fades away as we get up towards like PlayStation 2 and 3, but
Yeah.
I have legitimate 0 Super Nintendo or any of that stuff.
That's my favorite all-time console.
See,
When we
I
talk
went
about that.
I
What, the
went
Super
Super
the Super
Nintendo is my
Nintendo?
favorite. Yes.
I went the other way from most people. Most people went from Nintendo directly to Super Nintendo. I went from Nintendo to Sega Genesis.
Yep.
It's my
and-
second all-time favorite console. I was
I-
spoiled brat. I had both.
I
Oh.
never got into the Genesis because I didn't know anyone. We never had like I never had.
What
a
do you
Sega
want to know,
Genesis.
buddy? I had the Sega Channel. Do you remember the Sega Channel?
I do remember Sega Channel. Yes, I do.
The only thing I remember about Sega is Sonic the Hedgehog.
hmm
That's the only thing I
So
I can't
Sega
tell
was so much better because they got the licenses. Like they originally had Madden. They
Yes.
had Bill Walsh College Football.
Yes.
They had Pat O'Reilly's Full Court Basketball. Is it Pat O'Reilly? Yeah. Nick's
I think
coach.
it was.
Pat Riley.
Yeah. Pat Riley.
Riley.
Sorry. Pat Riley's Full Court Bat. Like they had all of these things. They also had Sonic. And then they had games like Kid Chameleon and just platformers that were just, they were better. And I don't know why. I think it was because it was the 90s. Everything was about attitude. Like Mario was cutesy and Nintendo was always like, no blood, no violence. Well,
Right.
here's Even Mortal Kombat comes out on the Super Nintendo. You have to put a blood code in. Sega's like, we don't care, do it.
Just do it. Right. Right. Like Sega Genesis probably brought out one of the most famous arcade ports of all time when they brought out NBA Jam and NFL
Lethal
Blitz.
Enforcers too.
Right. These were games that we had all played in the bowling alley or in the arcade or wherever we were, and now we could buy them and play them at home. And
they looked just as good.
Yes, it did. It sounded and looked just as good as the arcade.
NBA Jam, that was on. Wasn't that on Super?
That
NES?
was on Super Nintendo too. Yeah, later.
Was it?
Yeah, because that's where I remember playing it.
But they originally came out before they got the license to do it. If you remember right, they had a game called College Jam, which was a NBA Jam clone, but with college skins.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I completely lost my train of thought.
We just kind of finished up Nintendo. We were kind of
and then we went to Sega.
I just got thinking at the same time, and because we're not really talking about PC games either, so that's going to have to be a separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's the cool thing too about Sega.
Here's the thing. Oh. We'll do it this way. We're gonna do a 3-part. One will be just PC gaming, because there's a ton of.
And we can split them up too, so people aren't bombarded with gaming every week either.
Yeah, we can split these up. They don't have to be every.
But this is such a broad topic. We cannot cover this in one or two.
Cover it in one.
There's mobile gaming as well. And
the reason I bring this up is I was on a list of the top video games of every year, and I was looking at this earlier today.
I'd love to know if I could rattle off that list, because I really think if you gave me a year, I could probably figure out what was pretty close to being the best game that year.
Well, it was funny because I saw the game Myst.
Oh, that's like 94, 93, 94 PC?
Myst was 93. And then it got me thinking about your Space Quest and Police Quest.
What about the games like the Lucas games, Curse of Monkey Island, Grim Fandango, Maniac Mansion? You can put the gerbil in the microwave.
I don't know. We can go down such a.
Well, here's another thing. We're talking about Sega and Super Nintendo. How much did this piss you off when you were a kid, Mark? You're later on, Tim. You bought a game. Let's say like we're kids, Lion King, and we saw our buddies play the Sega version. We're like, that's awesome. But you have a Super Nintendo, so you buy it. It's not the same game. This was the era where you could have two games for different systems that were the same title, and they were different. And it was Disney that did a lot of it. The Lion King games were different. The Aladdin games were different.
I had Aladdin on Nintendo. There was an Aladdin game for Nintendo way back.
It was on
2 days
Super
after
Nintendo.
I got it.
It was on Super Nintendo too.
The Super Nintendo, the Sega version of Aladdin is harder than hell.
Yes,
the Lion King one.
I remember playing Aladdin. Now again, this must have been.
It's probably for Jordan, honestly.
No. Aladdin must have been 90.
Aladdin came out
91,
92.
91. It's okay. So, what I can remember about Aladdin playing on the Super Nintendo was the magic carpet, and you had to escape the lava and flying up
you're
and
coming
down.
out of the cave of thieves.
Yeah, that's what I remember about Aladdin. My God, you guys are bringing me. Fuck, you're bringing me back.
These are the memories of our childhood. This is what we grew up doing. We were that first generation that were told we were going to waste our brains. Your brain was going to rot, and this wasn't going to do anything for you. I promise you, those of us that played hours of video games have 10 times better hand-eye coordination than the average person that didn't. I promise you, we can think and react faster than most people who did not spend hours sitting there playing.
And we're good problem solvers.
Correct. You can go from A to B to C because that's what the game needed you to do. And if you applied that to your life, you could find ways to make that work. I've learned as much from video games as they have absolutely rotted my brain out. It's definitely 50-50. So, Mom, yes, you were right a little bit, but you were also wrong a little bit too.
So, as we kind of wrap up, what were you going to say, Brian?
Oh, I was just going to go with my 3 favorite SNES games because we did Nintendo. So now we got Super Nintendo. We'll just do quick 3.
Yeah.
Mine are A Link to the Past, which is my favorite all-time video game, is Zelda A Link to the Past for the SNES. Super Mario RPG, because I was a huge RPG fan, and this was Mario, and it was really cool. And it was done by Square, which is one of my favorite video game factories, if you will. And that leads me into my third one, which is arguably, I think, one of the greatest games made, and it's Final Fantasy 3 or 6, as it's really known as. It's relabeled 6 now. It was the third one to come out over here. I just played that game a month and a half ago on PC. It holds up. It's still good. But those are my 3 favorites.
I'm drawing a blank. Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past.
Mm-hmm.
That, I don't remember.
So that's the one where you start out and it's raining and your uncle says he has to go do something. You hop out of bed, you go out, it's raining, you have no weapons, you have to get to the castle, you drop down the flower hole, you're in the castle basement, you get the sword and shields, you have to get Zelda from the basement, bring her all the way through the sanctuary, you come out, then later on you go to the Dark World.
Yeah. I remember it. It was not one of the ones that I played a lot. So
it was
I had
a
to
game
think
that
there for a second.
Didn't hold your hand.
Yeah.
It gave you no direction. Here you go. Play.
So that was the follow-up to the original Legend of Zelda, correct?
That was the third.
No, that was the third one. The second one was The Adventures of Link, and we could have a whole episode if you want me to talk about that. Oddly charming yet terribly designed video game.
I hated that game with everything there was inside of me. One of my favorite games of my life was Zelda 1. One of my least favorite games of my life was Zelda 2. Oh my God, I hated The Adventure of Link. Oh my God, did I hate that game. Just the sound when you ran into the little black things that hit you on the map. Sounded like the game taking a shit all over your head, because that's exactly what the game was doing, was taking a dump on your head while you were playing this game. Oh, I hated that game.
What's funny is, as we've been talking, I've had to, because I was trying to think of some of the games that we played on the Super NES, or that I played on the Super NES, and I forgot about like F-Zero.
So good. One of the best racing games.
Oh my God, it was amazing. I'm looking at the that was when, Super Mario Kart came out. And that's one of my all-time favorite Super Nintendo games, is Super Mario Kart.
That's from the SFX chip, too. That's what made those games so good. Donkey Kong Country.
Yep.
When that came out, that was revolutionary. Like, I can remember in the mail, because we used to get Nintendo Power, I got a VHS cassette. And I was like, what is this? And it was all jungle themed, and it just said Donkey Kong on it. And you put it in, and it was a trailer for Donkey Kong Country. And I bet I watched that about 15 times.
Was it RBI Baseball? Was that the big one that for the Super NES?
That was on regular Nintendo first.
It started there, too. That was done.
But it was on Super Nintendo later. The graphics got better.
What's the one in because this is the one I remember. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Nintendo. Bases Loaded 2. Or was that regular Nintendo also? That was regular Nintendo also. Bases Loaded 1 and 2 was regular
when you got into Super Nintendo, that's kind of when the licenses came out. So I can remember on Super Nintendo, you had Ken Griffey Jr.'s Baseball. Ken Griffey Jr., which didn't have any real players except Ken Griffey. But then you had like ESPN did a bunch of games. They had like Baseball Tonight was on there. If you guys remember, they had like a whole thing with that, and Tony La Russa Baseball. And
I remember hearing about Tony La Russa Baseball. I remember that.
There was one baseball game, where
did it have robots and stuff in it? It was sci-fi and futuristic.
There was one you could play on the moon.
I
kinda
know the
fits
baseball
in.
game
And I
you're
want to say
talking
that's
about.
RBI baseball.
Yeah, it's like RBI Baseball 3000 or something like that. Or
Me and my
Tommy
dad-
would. Tommy would know. Tommy's huge into retro games. He's probably played it. He's probably screaming it right now in his car.
RBI Baseball was a game I got my dad into. My dad hated video games, thought Nintendo was the dumbest thing, but yet Santa Claus every year would get me a Nintendo if the other one didn't work. But one year I got RBI Baseball, and I actually got my dad to sit down every night. He'd come home from work. He'd come in the room, wake me up at like 11 at night, being like 7, 8 years old. And I had to wake up and I had to play a game of RBI Baseball with him before he went to bed. Some of my
Is that
best
the one
childhood memories.
where all the infielders
All three
and
outfielders
moved
moved.
at the same
Yep, they
time?
all
Yes.
moved with you together. The
And if you hit a
iconic-
home run, it was like
Right, the whole crowd went nuts, and when you first turned the game on, the baseball just plopped up like plong, and then everything came side scrolled to the right.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun,
Still
dun,
love
dun,
it.
dun,
Still
dun,
love it.
dun, dun, dun,
I had to just Google here and oh wait, was it Super Baseball Simulator 1000?
That's what it was. Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Is this the one I'm? Yes.
And we're not
Look at
even
Timmy.
talking about like the Star Wars games that were on there that were incredibly hard, like Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, and Super Return of the Jedi. Those games were insanely hard.
This is the one I can think of because you could play as a Red Sox, you played as, a major league team.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember playing this for hours upon hours. Oh my God, you guys brought me back to, wow.
But it's good
And you get
stuff,
to go
though,
back
man.
when we talk
Like,
about it again.
I know.
And just think that's more your wheelhouse. That's when we'll get into PS1 and
I was never into the PlayStation. I went from Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64 because then we had the kids. So it was Nintendo 64.
mm-hmm.
And then from Nintendo 64, I want to say we went to the PS2. And PS2 to the Xbox
you missed so
360.
much. You missed
And then
Saturn,
the Xbox 360
Dreamcast,
to the PS4.
GameCube.
Or did we go Xbox 360 to PS4? Or PS3? I don't know.
the PS3 probably first.
PS3, then to the PS3.
If you had
and
a
then to the
360,
PS4.
you didn't have a PS3. That was kind of the thing because when the PS3s came out, they were like $600 when they came out.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were.
And the 360 was like $400, and I went, "That's mine."
All right, so we gotta wrap it up.
This is definitely to be continued.
Yes,
Definitely.
for real.
Definitely.
To be continued, whether it's next week or the fall, whatever it is. We are definitely gonna have parts 2, 3, 4, whatever, because there's some rabbit holes that we can go down.
Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to start talking about PS1. I'm going to have to listen to you guys tell me about Super Nintendo and GameCube. I didn't play any of those. I went from Genesis to Sega Saturn to PlayStation 1, basically. I played Sega Saturn when nobody gave a shit about Saturn. I was still sitting in my room, man, playing
I
Sega
love
Saturn.
Sega Saturn, Virtual
Oh my
Fighter,
God.
Daytona Relay.
I still have to give you one of my Saturns. I have two. I got one. I found it. I found a controller. I found the power cord, and I got it in a bag. I just need to see you and give it to you. Because you
We
can
can make that
definitely have
happen.
one. You can definitely have one.
Oh,
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
you just made
toys.
Brian's night. So.
Yes, I did.
toys.
Yes, I did. I'm just trying to
Anywho.
make sure he doesn't accidentally hurt me in the ring when we go to Colorado in a month.
Folks, as usual, you guys need to listen to these two along with John Starner, Jeff Walsh, and Josh Rio on Sunday nights on Twitch. Johnny Death Drop, Dudes and Belts Wrestling Chatcast. It's really pretty cool. I tuned in again this past Sunday. You guys need to give them a shout, subscribe, check it out. It's good shit.
Brian and I he turns into the Coastal Crusader from Maine. I turn into the Masshole from Mass, just giving you shit, drinking a Dunk's coffee with a butt hanging out of my mouth. Like, I'm telling you right now, this is good shit. Come listen to us
It is.
talk some smack,
I tell you
talk
what.
some wrestling.
If
Good
you
stuff.
if you enjoy wrestling and you enjoy the indie scene, this really is pretty cool.
It has reinvigorated my love of wrestling
That's
Mine
cool.
too.
to talk about this stuff.
Immensely.
So give them a listen on Sunday evenings. I think starting at 8:00. I think 8:00 Sundays.
9.
9.
8. This past Sunday, we did a watch along for the pay-per-view, so we started an hour early.
Yeah,
most of the time it's
we
9
premiered
o'clock.
the Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling pay-per-view that they had.
Yep.
So check them out typically at 9:00 Eastern Standard Time. For our friends in Canada, that would be at 10:00 your time.
Atlantic Standard Time.
Atlantic Standard Time.
Yes.
As usual, also check the three of us out. Potentially have a fourth joining us. We're going to tease that.
Dun, dun, dun.
We'll tease it.
We're calling it the end.
We're in negotiations right now to what will probably end the show, but that's okay.
Negotiation? We're not giving them anything. That's bullshit. What are you talking about?
Or her.
Or her.
Or her.
Or him. Or him and her.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, check us out Tuesday mornings, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is when our Candlepin chat goes, Ripping the Rack goes Candlepin only. And then
7
again,
a.m. I'm just going to bed at 7 a.m. That's what time you put the video out?
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
I put it up at 7 because, again, our friends in Canada, it's 8:00 their time. So
and Angela and Calvin need something to listen to while they're at work.
Yes, Angela and Calvin need stuff to listen to. Hoagie needs stuff to listen to.
While he's in school.
Well, he's in school.
Yeah. And a boy, Hoax. Way to take care of business, buddy.
As usual, you can find us, email us, smoke signal us, whatever it is, rippingtherackpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter at Ripping the Rack Podcast. You can find Maki on his OnlyFans. Just give him a shout.
I'm just waiting for my account to be authenticated, and then we'll be good. It might take 3 to 5 years.
Perfect.
We'll
Brian has his OnlyFans up. Just look up for Big Beautiful Brian, Triple B. He is Triple B. That is our new. We got it. Brian is Triple B. Big Beautiful Brian.
You just broke the podcast guy.
And again, folks, you can hear us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Anchor,
Excellent
Breaker,
segue.
and wherever else you listen to your podcasts during the day.
I can't.
We broke back.
Folks, thank you so much for listening again. For Tim, Mark, and myself, Brian, have a wonderful Friday and enjoy.
Oh, Triple B. We'll see you later. All right, we're out of here. Peace out, folks.